Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report with some important Raiders news that you need to know. We're going to talk about Davis Webb. We're going to talk about Joe Brady. We're going to talk about Brian Daboll. And obviously, we're going to talk about Klint Kubiak. Also, I'm going to get into the latest around some of these NFL coaching rumors. I believe that there is a certain Raiders coach that is linked to a certain team and could end up getting a job. Now, I know this. I know I'm not the only Raiders fan yesterday that's sitting around waiting for some news to end up dropping. Maybe it's Webb, maybe it's not. I understand that. I will say this. I am going to be live in, I'm going to say 3, maybe about 4 hours. Noon Eastern time is when I thought about going live, and we're going to sit back and we're going to wait. We're going to talk a little Raiders football and see what else ends up rolling in, because yes, Davis Webb and multiple other coaches had interviews yesterday, but there was some speculation, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit, that Webb interview could carry over to Tuesday, and obviously we're sitting here on Tuesday waiting and wondering, are the Raiders going to hire a head coach? And at any point in today, tomorrow, the next 365 days, if you're looking for Raiders updates, I promise you this right now, I'm always going to do my best to keep you guys up to date. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. So let's first talk about Davis Webb. He had a second interview yesterday, and if you watched my show, I was told by multiple sources that the Raiders were, very interested in Webb. Obviously, it's why they had the second interview. One of the Raiders owners flew in. I was told that was close to a 16-hour flight. So you're making a 16-hour flight to come watch somebody and come listen to somebody in an interview. You're obviously very, very interested. But it wasn't only, from what I understand, the interest in Webb. It sounds like there's a lot of interest in Daboll, and there's a lot of interest in Joe Brady. Whether that's a head coach, whether that's as an OC role, I still do not know that information. But what I know is this. Rappaport did report yesterday that there was a belief that Davis Webb interview could bleed into Tuesday. It's Tuesday, so obviously it happened. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, and I understand that it's different situations. It's not apples to apples, but in my years that I've covered the Raiders, certain regimes, certain like McDaniels and Ziegler, they handled it one way. Gruden and Mayock handled it one way. Telesco and AP handled it one way. Pete Caroll, and Spytek, they handled it one way. I remember there was a lot of speculation that Pete Caroll could be fired the moment that Week 18 game happened. What happened? Next day, the Raiders think about it, and then the news ends up coming out. I wonder if that's going to be something similar, and if it is, I'm going to put that in the back of my mind of maybe that's how this Raiders team operates. They're going to dot their I's, they're going to cross their T's, they're going to sleep on it, and then they're going to wake up the next morning, and then that's when the news is going to come out. Because I'll say this, I still believe that Davis Webb is going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I want to be clear. I'm not a reporter. I'm not going to sit up here and report something that isn't true. I'm always going to tell you guys what I hear. It's the job that I do here, and I take a lot of pride in it. But if you were to ask me right now, who do I think is the next Raiders head coach? Yeah, I'm going to say it's Davis Webb. That's not saying that I'm saying it's Davis Webb. I'm saying if I were to put my betting card out there, it would go with Broncos quarterback coach and pass game coordinator Davis Webb, because he has impressed the Raiders. And he's impressed the Raiders in a lot of different ways. And I reached out to my source yesterday, and I was like, hey, did you hear anything about the second interview in regarding to Webb? And all I heard was, they were impressed by his ability to teach and his ability to coach. And that's something that, this organization and all organizations, honestly, should be looking for. Now, again, I didn't hear a lot of what happened yesterday. I want to be clear on that. But the one thing that I was told was teach and coach is something that Davis Webb is really selling to John Spytek, Tom Brady, and all the Raiders owners that were in the building yesterday. But I do sit back and I always think, all right, well, what are some of the things that I know Mark Davis cares about? What are some of the things that I know Spytek, Brady care about? And they want guys that eat, breathe, sleep football. That's what they want. That's who Brady is. That's who Spytek is. And I do think that they want somebody that is exactly like that. And if you're sitting back going, yeah, that's a coach that I want. I mean, honestly, man, that's Davis Webb. Davis Webb is a football dude, and he comes from a football family. I mean, his dad coached for 35 years. I saw this article. Now, this article is an old article from 2017, and I saw it pop up on Twitter. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to read you what this 2017 article is, and maybe it'll inspire a little bit more fandom around Davis Webb, because I think everybody out there likes Davis Webb, but they love Klint Kubiak. So because of that, it's kind of hard to really get excited about Webb if you still think that there's a shot out there for Kubiak. And I'll say this, yesterday my mind was like, no chance Kubiak's coming to the Raiders. I'll tell you what one of the people here at Chat Sports showed me, a text message in regards to Kubiak, and this is somebody that, not going to tell you who it is, but they are very well connected in their own NFL circles here. They're one of our top guys at Chat Sports, and he's broken a lot of stories here. So I'm going to tell you what the text was, because if you're a Kubiak guy, you're going to like that text a lot. So here's this article from 2017 around Davis Webb. And it says, he was so into culture of football, how it was. He came out to watch a spring practice, and he was very attentive to everything that was going on. The receivers, he'd go down to watch the O-line drills. He paid attention to how we communicated and stuff. Then he'd sit there and he'd talk to the strength coach for 2-3 hours. Then we went in and we watched tape. He was trying to figure out if this was going to be the best place for him to get into the league. So this is when Webb's trying to figure out, he's transferring from Texas Tech, and he's trying to figure out if he wants to go to Cal. So this is an article, again, in regards to his final year at Cal. Trying to figure out if this is the best place for him to get into the league. Quote, it was very calculated. It wasn't like your typical, hey, we've got great weather here and here is the Bay Area. I didn't take him to a nice steak restaurant or anything like that. Well, we ended up going to a nice restaurant, but he really wasn't intrigued with that stuff. He just wanted to play ball. Quote, you're getting a kid with incredible work ethic, a very driven person, very motivated. He burns it at both ends. He's going to be in the facility. He'll probably be one of the first in and one of the last ones to leave. We're going to keep it going on this article. Again, this is from 2017. Webb's devotion to film started young. He would draw up play diagrams and suggestions for his dad before he even reached high school. By the end of his time at Cal, Spavital was letting Webb run some offensive meetings. So this is the coach here at Cal. Webb remained an active participant, sometimes questioning Spavital about things that he felt ran counter to something established in previous discussions. The reason why that I bring that up is because if you watch the video that I did yesterday, there's a really big correlation of when Davis Webb was a quarterback as a player. A lot of those teams, quarterbacks had career years. And again, there's 5 different examples that I provided yesterday in the video that I dropped. But, you're looking at a guy that's raised around football and seems like he's a very, very smart football mind, and he's got a good sense of what quarterbacks are supposed to be doing. Now he's learning underneath Sean Payton, and you're learning underneath quarterback whisperer and Payton. I know that it's going to make some people nervous out there hiring Davis Webb, but I am curious of what you have to say, and this is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Do you want the Las Vegas Raiders to go out and hire Davis Webb? Type hire for yes, type pass for no. My answer is coming up here after this YouTube ad break. I'm going to sit up here and I'm going to go, I am okay with the Raiders hiring Davis Webb. And I want to be very clear with that. I am very okay with the idea of him doing it. It's not a slam dunk to me. I'm going to continue to sit up here and say, if they hire Webb, it's a B. And I say B because it really determines on who you decide to bring in as your offensive coordinator, who you decide to bring in as a defensive coordinator. All that stuff is extremely, extremely important for a unproven coach in Webb, and that's what he is. Now, again, you can buy into somebody who's 30, 31 years old, who's got a great track record as a player coach in the NFL. Obviously, he didn't play in the NFL, but when he's on a staff in that quarterback room, there's a lot of quarterbacks that developed to be very, very talented. And then in the other breath, as a coach, what he's doing right now for Bo Nixon in Denver, I also think it's impressive. And if anybody's going to hit me with, look at Jarrett Stidham that last game. Look at Jarrett Stidham in the first quarter, and then look at Jarrett Stidham when the weather got bad. I really think that Stidham was presentable, and that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for your backup quarterback to be presentable in an AFC championship game. Hell, this is a one-possession game. Think about how many times the Raiders got blown out this year when they were putting in their starter, Geno. And it's funny, the whole Geno conversation, it could always get me on a tangent. Seattle Seahawks win the Super Bowl. Raiders have the number 1 overall pick. Geno Smith, in fact. But I saw somebody say this to me on Twitter, and I'm going to bring it up here because, again, I know that there's some people out there that are like, Davis Webb's resume, Davis Webb's not qualified. If you're looking at resumes and resumes alone, I'm going to be honest, you're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. But I also will say that Pete Caroll proved Josh McDaniels proved that you can have an unbelievable resume. It doesn't make you the right hire for this situation. You might be perfect in one spot. Like I see Raider fans going, oh, well, Josh McDaniels is in the Super Bowl. Josh McDaniels is an offensive coordinator, and he found his spot in New England. The problem with the Raiders is we haven't found our guy. We're too busy going out and trying to hire that guy's guy and forcing him into our situation. It's been the issue with the quarterback situation. You try to take a former quarterback and fit him into what we're doing. That's why I want to go out and get Mendoza. It's also kind of why I want to go out and get Davis Webb, somebody who might not have all the qualifications. But if you're a Raiders fan, no matter who you hire, I don't care who we hire, I guarantee you, every Raider fan, that little bit of that shoulder, like the whole angel, you got the demon. The angel on me says, it's the off season. Let's have some fun. It's going to be all good, and we got hope again. But then there's that little demon on my shoulder saying, but it's the Raiders. And, I don't, until I see the Raiders be good, I don't know if I'm going to believe that they ever are going to be good. And I know I'm not the only person that thinks that, right? If the Raiders go out and get Sam Darnold last year, I don't know if Sam Darnold's any good. I don't know. I don't know, right? Because we failed so many times over and over and over again. I mean it. I don't care if you bring in Pete Caroll. I don't care if you would have brought in Klint Kubiak. I don't care who you bring in. There's always Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, right? The reason why people doubt is because we've been awful for 23 years. We have. And we've been the worst team in the NFL, I think arguably the last two. So, to me, I get the idea of he doesn't have all the qualifications. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a bad hire. Just like when you have all the qualifications, doesn't mean that you're going to be a good hire. What's important about hiring a coach, it's just like a marriage, right? Not everybody's significant other is perfect for another person, right? Your wife's not perfect for me. My wife's not perfect for you. Husband, whatever it is, sometimes you just got to find your fit. And if John Spytek and Tom Brady and the Raiders owners think that Davis Webb is that guy, again, I'm not in that meeting room. Are you in the meeting room? If the answer to that is no, then I think all you have to do as a Raider fan is have hope and trust the process. And, to me, I kind of like the guy that people are doubting. I kind of like the guy that's got to go out there and prove himself. Because you look at a lot of other coaches, Gruden probably didn't feel like he had to prove himself to the point of Webb's gonna. McDaniel, same exact thing. Pete Caroll, same exact thing. And, people are throwing out, this is AP 2.0. AP 2.0. Again, Antonio Pierce was a motivational speaker. Davis Webb is a coach. And there's a really, really big difference between those two. But you can't deny the quarterback development. And you can't deny the teams that he's played and coached for and see the success in that quarterback room. So all I'm saying is this. I am okay with the Davis Webb hire. But you also got to be able to bring in the right OC, the right DC, but especially, and I mean especially, the right offensive coordinator. If you don't know which coaches, or what players I'm talking about, and the 5 different situations that Davis Webb has been a part of, I'm going to put that video for you guys down in the comments, down in the description of today's show, and I want you to go check it out, because there's good and there's bad. And I like that Davis Webb has learned from the good, and he's learned from the bad, because he's worked with a lot of great, and I mean a lot of great offensive minds, and he has worked with a lot of great quarterback minds. And the fact that his voice is being heard with those minds tells me that he's a very well-respected coach. So let's now go to the other part here, because again, I said, if you're going to bring in a guy like Webb, it's at the utmost importance that you bring in the proper offensive coordinator. And Brian Daboll was in Las Vegas yesterday. Joe Brady had a second interview yesterday. I do wonder if the Raiders are trying to pin Daboll and Brady against each other because also of the Buffalo Bills. And I say that simply because if you're Buffalo and you're debating of who you want to hire, I'll say this. If Buffalo says no to Joe Brady and no to Brian Daboll as a head coach, I don't think it's smart for the Raiders to hire him as head coach, because that organization knows those two guys better than us. Then again, if Brady and Spytek are really passionate about it, well then who am I to say that it doesn't make sense? But if you told me right now Davis Webb's the head coach and Joe Brady and Brian Daboll are our offensive coordinator, I don't know how you don't get fired up about that, right? Cliff Kingsbury's been a name. It's been kind of silent around Cliff. I think Cliff Kingsbury's an interesting offensive coordinator. I don't know if he's the best person, but you can't deny that he doesn't know X's and O's in quarterback development. Look at what he was able to do with Washington. Jaden Daniels got to the NFC Championship game in that first year. So to me, I always look at what the connections are. And personally, I would rather Daboll over Joe Brady, if I'm being 100% honest, but that's also because of the connection. Daboll coached Webb from 2019 to 2021. Josh Allen had a lot of success in those years. Then Daboll got hired by the New York Giants. What did he do? One of the first things that he did was he brought Davis Webb with him. Daniel Jones had a career year, ended up getting paid 4 years, $160 million. So, I get the fact that Daniel Jones is one example, Josh Allen is one example, but you also look at where Allen was before Webb and what Daniel Jones was in after Webb. I mean, you got to at least think about it. It makes you think. Now, there are some rumors out there that Daboll is either expected to, A, take a head coaching gig or take the Titans OC job. I do wonder if you're, the Raiders, if you're willing to pay Daboll a little bit more. And I'm not saying Daboll reminds me of Chip Kelly, but I do think that there's a similar ideology of here's a guy who's been a coach before, who can be the head coach on the offensive side of the football. I know Davis Webb is an offensive-minded guy, but Webb also, I think, is kind of being hired to be this CEO style of head coach if he ends up getting the job. But again, there's a lot of people in Titan land that think that Daboll's going to be the OC if he doesn't get a head coaching gig. If I'm being honest with you, if I get to pick who do I want to work with, do I want to work with the Raiders or do I want to work with Tennessee? I mean, personally, both organizations, I get it, have done a lot of losing. But I do think that the situation in Las Vegas is a more desirable one. Now, I will say I think Cam Ward probably fits the bill of what Josh Allen is more so than what Fernando Mendoza can do. But both guys are big upside quarterbacks, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that Daboll, if choose, he ends up choosing us. But there's still a lot of other things to be able to get to on this program. So we're going to talk about Klint Kubiak here in just a moment. I'm going to show you that message that my buddy sent me, and then the latest around the NFL, because I do think that there's a certain Raiders coach that could end up getting hired. Before I get into that, shout out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. The big game, it's almost here. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, it's simple to play. You pick more or less on at least two player stats, and if you get your picks right, you can cash in. If you didn't know, it's available in all 50 states. Also, Prize Picks offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. So if you want to go more on Sam Darnold passing touchdown, rush attempts, and passing yards, you're going to be able to do it for the big game. If you want to do that with Drake May, you're going to be able to do it. I'll say this, whoever you're rooting for in the big game, I would put a lineup in, and I would put a stack around the number one player that you want to see succeed. Like in my mind, I'm rooting for Seattle. So in my mind, I'm probably going to put a stack together with Darnold, or maybe I'll put one together with Kenneth Walker. It totally depends on what I personally want to do. But if you miss fantasy, go get started with Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So before we get into the Klint Kubiak discussion, I did see this report from Pelissero, and he kind of put something out there interesting of maybe one of the reasons why certain coaches aren't as interested in the Raiders job, and maybe it's one of the reasons why a guy by the name of Klint Kubiak decides to stay in Seattle. So, quote, Las Vegas, you've got Tom Brady running the football operation along with John Spytek. That's directly a quote from owner Mark Davis. And yet, people come out of those interviews just going, who exactly is running the building? This is what Pelissero said on the Rich Eisen show. What am I looking for here? Tom Brady lives in Miami. How is he co-running the football operations from 2,000 miles away? Again, in a really tough division where you're going up against Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh. And I don't blame any coach out there from wondering who's running the show. And this is like one of those reasons why, like somebody asked me today, why do I believe in John Spytek? I believe in John Spytek because I think he's a smart football mind. And I believe the way that he looks at football is honestly very similar to the way that I look at football. And if I'm the Raiders, yes, Tom Brady's got to be an important decision maker. But I do think that, like, you got to let your GM be the GM. Like, that's why he was hired. You got to let your front office be the front office. Like, those are all very important things. And I'm not saying that, like, Davis Webb's going to get hired and then he's just going to listen. He's going to be a puppet to whatever Spytek and Brady want. No, but you do at least need a coach that's willing to listen and not think that he's the smartest guy in the room, which plagued Pete Caroll, plagued John Gruden, plagued Josh McDaniels. You know, like, it really did hurt those guys. And if you're the Raiders, you want to be able to find the best grouping of everybody thinking alike and being able to buy in. And, you know, again, like, I think Davis Webb has that mind. So here's what's interesting, though, about Kubiak, okay? Because yesterday I was on the boat of no chance Kubiak's coming to the Raiders. It sounds like Kubiak staying in Seattle, XYZ. I mean, there's nothing on Kubiak. So for me, in my experience of doing this show, if I don't hear anything, right, like, again, I'm talking to people that are talking to Raiders owners. So if they're giving me certain information, like, I'm going to take the information and I'm going to run with it. I'm going to talk about it. And there's obviously some things I can't talk about, and there's obviously some things that I'm more than able to talk about. But, like, in my conversations, I have not heard anything about Klint Kubiak. I haven't heard his name, haven't heard anything. So, like, in my mind, if I don't hear anything, I'm starting to just think that the Raiders aren't worrying about him and their attention is turned to somebody else. And when I got owners telling me certain things, and it's like, you know, the video that I did on Friday, I was like, based on the information I got, I was like, man, I think that that's Davis Webb, even though the source that I talked to said that he thought the Raiders were talking about LaFleur. But I've been, you know, talking to a lot of people. I write a lot of notes. You keep those notes, then you go back and you're like, well, I was told that about Davis Webb. And then I have another source reach out to me on Sunday, and they tell me some stuff, and I'm like, that sounds like Davis Webb. Again, I'm not saying Davis Webb is going to be the next guy, but I do love tea leaves. I do love, you know, rumors, and I think when you connect the dots a lot of times, it can lead you to where you want to go. But I also know this, the NFL can be quickly change on a dime. You know, I was a believer that Ben Johnson was going to be the Raiders head coach last year. I did. I really thought it. I thought Tom Brady was going to be able to get it. And then obviously, you know, Johnson ends up going to the Chicago Bears, and we're left with Pete Caroll, unfortunately. But there are certain people in the NFL that you can't deny they got sources. And Schefter's been kind of hinting a little bit about a certain coach in regards to the Raiders. And I don't think that he's been talking about Klint Kubiak. You know, I think he's been hinting at Davis Webb for the past few days now. But also, Adam Schefter yesterday was talking about the potential head coaches for the Silver and Black, and he mentioned Daboll, Brady, and Webb. Now, he might have mentioned those three names because those were the three guys in the building yesterday, but, like, he's not even mentioning Klint Kubiak. So for Schefter to not even mention Kubiak, who, again, Kubiak's the top candidate out there. Like, if you're the top candidate out there, the way ESPN works, they know for a fact that if they put Kubiak and the Raiders in the same sentence on TV, they're going to get way more eyeballs than anything else. Yeah, Davis Webb creates a little bit of intrigue, no doubt about it, but, like, you also got to understand how they operate. Pat McAfee wants eyeballs. I want eyeballs, right? Like, it's how this business works. But if Schefter's not even mentioning Kubiak's name, you know, like, that tells me that I don't know how much of the Kubiak rumors are personally happening. And again, like, I personally haven't heard anything about him. There has been a lot of speculation that he's going to stay in Seattle, that the Seahawks are going to give him a lot of money, that Kubiak wants to stay in Seattle because he's not crazy about a lot of these other jobs. And, you know, look at what Ben Johnson did. Ben Johnson in 2024 with the Lions OC, I mean, he was the hottest commodity out there. Everybody wanted the piece of Ben Johnson. Everybody wanted to go hire him. So what did he do? He stayed with Detroit for one more year. Stayed for Detroit, felt like he could learn a little bit more, got more comfortable in his bag as an OC, and then went to Chicago in 2025, and he was able to get the Bears to nearly the NFC Championship game. So I wonder if Kubiak, looking at what Ben Johnson's doing, he's like, well, I can do the exact same thing because there's going to be more openings next year. It's the NFL. There's openings every single year. So I do sit back and I wonder, could Kubiak be looking at another job? Could he be looking at another gig? And there's also so many things outside of football that a lot of times we don't even think about. Like, maybe his family doesn't want to move to Vegas. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to move to Vegas. I don't know. Money helps with a lot of those situations, but yesterday, I was under the impression that no chance in hell Kubiak was going to be the Raiders coach. Then somebody here from Chat Sports, who you guys know is very well connected in his own NFL circles, has broke multiple stories, sent me this text message from one of his sources. And this is a source that I have discussed and I have mentioned on my show before. It said, quote, once they're legally able to do so, the Raiders are expected to quickly finalize a deal making Klint Kubiak their next head coach. I mean, I saw that yesterday and I was like, holy shit. I mean, again, it's curveball after curveball. If anybody out there is saying that they know exactly what the Raiders are going to do, I don't believe you because, again, like I don't even know exactly what the Raiders are going to do. And I'm not an insider. I'm not a beat reporter. I'm a normal fan that when I get information, I share it with y'all. And I think over the years that I've done this show, I think people that truly watch the show understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to get information out there. I'm not going to try to be the first to report a story. I'm not going to be the first to do that. If I get info like I did on the Christian Wilkins situation, yeah, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to talk about it because there's certain people that I trust a little bit more than others. But, we got that story out a month before anybody else got that story out because you got to do your homework. You got to do your due diligence. And right now, I'm reaching out to people left and right. I went to bed last night. I told my wife, I was like, I'll go to bed at midnight. And if nothing happens, that's when I'll go to bed. And then I got up at 6 a.m. today. Why? Because I couldn't sleep. Because I'm just like all of y'all. I want to know who that next Raiders head coach is going to be. But to me, you got to go back and you got to think again of what Schefter had to say. And the Raiders, they can meet with Kubiak from now until February 1st. You can meet him in person. You just can't officially hire him until after the Super Bowl. So if you want to be able to do that, you might be able to have those conversations behind closed doors, and then the moment the Super Bowl's over, bingo, bango, it's officially official, you might be able to do that. You can do that. But the other reason why I don't know what to think because I do still see a lot of people on social media saying, hey, Klint Kubiak's in the mix. I had somebody reach out to me yesterday who covers the Raiders and said that they were told that Klint Kubiak is still in the mix. I'm not saying that person's wrong. I'm saying I just haven't heard it, right? Like, it's as simple as that. So I'm going to ask you guys one more question, and then we're going to get ready to wrap up this show. What does Klint Kubiak decide to do? Do you think he stays in Seattle, or do y'all think he goes to the Raiders? Or does he take another job? My answer is going to be coming up here right after this quick YouTube ad break. I'm going to say that he stays in Seattle, and I'm just going to go with my gut. I'm going to go what I've heard, and I'm going to still sit up here and say that I believe Davis Webb is going to be the next head coach of the Raiders. But I want to be clear. If you think I'm going to be upset if Klint is hired and Davis Webb's not, you're crazy. Perfect world, maybe we could bring in Davis Webb to be an offensive coordinator underneath Klint Kubiak, which, again, the first time I heard about Webb, I heard it was more of an OC interview, which I mentioned back on Wednesday, January 7th when they first brought him in for that interview. But, I'm always going to tell you what I hear. I'm always going to tell you what my gut is. I think it's part of the job that I have here at the Raiders Report. It's also part of the friendship that I feel like a lot of us have been able to develop. And, I can't wait to meet a bunch of y'all in San Jose, California on Friday, February 6th at Fairway Sports Bar and Lounge. If you don't know the event, look it up. That's where I'm going to be. Friday, February 6th from 7 to 10. But, I'm always going to give you guys my opinion. Whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, I think that's why people watch this show, to hear what we have to say. Raider Nation, you guys know I rock with you. But the other reason why I'm going to say, I believe he stays in Seattle is because Schefter reported that he thinks that every single head coach opening is filled by Wednesday. Cardinals, Raiders, Browns, Bills. All four of those jobs filled by Wednesday. I don't know if the Raiders can technically fill that job until after the Super Bowl. Now, again, if it's crickets and we don't hear anything for a week, I might be like, oh shit, they might actually end up hiring Kubiak. But we haven't heard anything about a second interview. And if I don't hear anything about a second interview with Kubiak, I don't know how if you're the Raiders, you just hire him. Right? If you don't hear anything about a second interview with Kubiak, I think that tells you everything you need to know. If news comes out today or tomorrow that the Raiders have scheduled a second interview with Kubiak, then get fired the F up, because I know this. I'll get fired the F up, because Klint's been my number one candidate that I've wanted for the Raiders back in early December when I did my first show of when the Raiders fire Pete Caroll, these are the coaches that I want. Klint Kubiak was number one on my list. Davis Webb wasn't even in that video, because I didn't know Davis Webb was going to be an option. But I trust certain people. I hear certain things, and I'm a lot more confident in Davis Webb now. If you were to ask me Davis Webb or Joe Brady as a head coach, I would say Davis Webb. I would. I'd look right Davis Webb. That's exactly what I would do. And it's because I'm just going to believe a lot of the things that I've heard, and I'm going to believe the quarterback development that I've seen from multiple organizations, whether he's been a player or whether he's been a coach. Because for coaches to allow players to run meetings, that is at the utmost level of respect. And he was running meetings with multiple organizations in college and in the NFL. The last thing that I want to hit here is Patrick Graham, the Raiders defensive coordinator this past season. A lot of buzz about him potentially going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so keep an eye out for that. Maybe decides to go to Pittsburgh to be the defensive coordinator there. Again, y'all, I'm getting ready to hop on out of here. I will be live at noon Eastern time today. Unless new information comes out, I'm going to try to get live ASAP Rocky. You guys already know I'm going to be live all day today. I usually go live later on, but if there's coaching buzz happening, and there's already some coaching buzz happening right now around the Browns, but I plan on being live today for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. I don't know, however long it takes. But if you want to hang out with me, you want to hang out with the Chat Sports team, make sure you're subscribed, make sure those notifications are turned on, and I'll see you guys here in just a little bit, noon Eastern time, live on the Raiders Report. If you want even more content from me, you can always hit that subscribe button. I promise you. Just pretend it's like Charles Woodson with the Oakland. Oh, I miss Oakland. Probably actually should get an Oakland background. If you want even more videos from me, though, you can click on one of these bad boys here. YouTube's essentially recommending if you enjoyed this video, then you're going to enjoy one of them. Appreciate y'all. Go Raiders. Let's get a head coach.